I chose her best friend's father. That summer, I moved into their guest house. I told myself it would just be a place to heal. I was raw from loss. My husband Daniel had been gone for barely a year, and grief had settled into me like an uninvited tenant who refused to leave. My best friend Lily insisted I couldn't keep living surrounded by memories that hurt too much, so she offered me the guest house behind her parents' home. That's how I ended up seeing him every day, Elliot, Lily's father. Twice my age, successful, always the picture of restraint. I remembered being 16 and thinking of him the way girls sometimes think of their friends' dads, handsome yet untouchable, courteous to the point of distance. Now at 35, I told myself those boundaries still held. But proximity has a way of wearing down walls you swear will never crack. My life had been steady before the accident. Daniel and I had built a life together, complete with a warm 2-bedroom in the city, my marketing career, and Sunday brunches with friends who had been in our lives for years. I cherished that structure, the sense of knowing what came next. Losing him shattered all of it. At first, I thought the guest house would be a safe cocoon, just me, my grief, the soft hum of cicadas at dusk, and the cool scent of jasmine drifting from the trellis outside the kitchen window. But exactly a week after moving in, I caught Elliot watching me through the back garden, not in a way that felt invasive, but in a way that made my breath stutter, like he'd been startled to see me barefoot in the grass, the hem of my sundress brushing my knees, hair loose down my back. It started small. Breakfasts that spilled into unhurried conversations. A shared bottle of Pinot Noir when Lily was out late. One evening when a summer storm rolled in and knocked out the power, we lit candles in the kitchen, rain hammering the roof while the air buzzed thick with something that was not quite spoken. Still, my loyalty to Lily and to the lines that had always been clear kept my voice steady, my eyes from lingering. Then one afternoon, I saw him come home from work, jacket slung casually over his shoulder, tie loosened, his smile soft when he spotted me pruning Lily's mother's roses. And my heart, a heart I thought was still buried with Daniel, shocked me by sparking. A few days later, I overheard Lily on the phone mentioning that her father had been alone longer than anyone realized, that her mother had left over a year ago, though they hadn't made it official. That knowledge rushed through me like heat. I thought about him differently after that, not as the fixed figure of my teenage years, but as a man whose life had cracks just like mine. I hated myself for wondering, if we were both broken, could we fit? My grief made me restless, pacing the little rooms of the guest house at night. I could hear the murmur of his television through the garden some evenings. Sometimes I would stand on the porch in the dark, staring toward the pool, lit a pale aqua under the moonlight, imagining him inside, reading, pouring a late drink. My hands would tremble the way they hadn't in months, from something that wasn't sadness, but longing. One Sunday, Lily was called away for work, and her mother was visiting family. I made tea and wandered into the main house to return a book. He was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, the smell of coffee and something spiced, cardamom, maybe, carrying through the air. "Stay," he said simply, motioning to the pot. We sat at the table, and our conversation twisted from safe banter into something slower, heavier. The kind of talk you have only when you do not have to rush toward an ending. When his hand brushed mine as he passed me the sugar, something in me jolted, every nerve alive in my skin. If this confession has you holding your breath the way I was in that moment, hit like and share, because you will not believe what happened next. I told myself it was nothing, that my pulse was only reacting to too much caffeine. But later that day, he came out by the pool where I was reading. He stood there for a moment, the sunlight catching the silver in his hair. and said in a voice lower than usual, "You look more at peace here." My throat caught, because it was true. I had been sleeping better, smiling more, and it was him. The way he listened without rushing to fill silences. The way he saw me not as a widow to be pitied, but as a woman who might still have something left to give. But with every shared look and every lingering pause, the weight of what it could mean if this stretched too far began pressing in. He was Lily's father. She had been my anchor through Daniel's death. To betray her trust would be unforgivable, or maybe unforgivable was exactly the word for what we both were starting to feel. A week later, there was another storm. Lightning slashed the sky, the pool rippling under hard rain. The guest house heater had gone out, so I knocked on the back door of the main house, shivering. He wrapped me in a throw blanket without a word. We stood by the fireplace, watching the flicker of light on the walls, and he told me how empty the house had felt since his wife left. His voice was quiet, but every word carried a truth that sunk into my chest. I found myself stepping closer, almost without realizing it. I could smell the cedar of the fire, the faint citrus from his aftershave. My hand lifted as if it had its own will, brushing a drop of rain from his cheek. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then I stepped back, breath shaky, because any further and the world we both knew would tilt. Since that night, I have been caught in the space between terror and desire. Every walk across the garden feels like walking a tightrope. I tell myself to keep my distance, but when I see him reading on the patio in the morning light, part of me wonders if second chances do not always look like new love in your 20s, but something braver, riskier. When you think that chapter of your life has closed, I have no idea where this will go. Maybe we will keep this line intact. Maybe one night we will stop pretending that we have not already crossed it in every way that matters, except the one we cannot speak of. What I do know is that for the first time since Daniel was gone, my heart is not only beating, it is reaching. And that is both the most frightening and the most beautiful thing I have felt in years. If you crave more raw, emotional confessions, please like, share, and subscribe. Your next chapter awaits.